The desert had its own kind of silence, heavy, hollow, and honest. The kind of silence that didn't lie. Officer Linda Hayes had driven this highway 100 times before, but never like this. Her patrol car sat tilted off the shoulder. One side caved in. The windshield cracked like a spiderweb. Inside, she was slumped against the steering wheel, blood trickling from her forehead. Wrists zip-tied to the steering column. Her service weapon was gone. Her radio, smashed. Whoever did this knew exactly what they were doing. She blinked slowly, trying to stay conscious. The sun was slipping behind the red rocks, casting long, unforgiving shadows. The dry air smelled of dust and engine coolant. Linda's heart pounded, not from pain, but from something deeper. Betrayal. It wasn't a stranger who ambushed her. It was someone from her own department. She'd recognized the boots as they walked away. She'd trained the man who wore them. She thought of her son, Paul. Christmas Eve 6 years ago, when he died in a rollover on this very stretch of road. He'd been on his way to surprise her during a holiday shift. Every December since, she'd worked this route, chasing ghosts instead of criminals. Some part of her had never left that night. Maybe that's why they chose this place to leave her now. Cold, alone, forgotten. Linda tried to focus on something, anything, but her vision blurred. A sound, barely audible at first, rose in the distance. Not tires, not footsteps. It was the sound of paws. Steady, familiar. She froze. Could it be coyotes? She braced herself. But then, a silhouette emerged from the glow of dusk. A large German shepherd. Broad shoulders, graying snout. That walk steady, proud. Her breath caught in her throat. "Cooper!" she whispered, barely audible through cracked lips. Couldn't be. He had vanished 8 months ago after his retirement. Rachel, the K-9 unit vet, said he'd likely run off to die alone, like most aging working dogs. But here he was, alive, and not alone. 2 other dogs flanked him, smaller, younger. Cooper moved closer to the wrecked car, eyes locked on Linda's. His gaze held no panic, only purpose, as if he knew she needed him. Somewhere down the road, a second sound echoed, heavy tires on gravel. Someone was coming back, not to rescue her, but to finish what they started. And Cooper had only seconds to decide what to do. Cooper didn't hesitate. He moved like a dog half his age, leaping onto the side of the patrol car with a grunt of effort. His paws pressed against the shattered window, sniffing quickly, assessing. Linda tried to lift her head, but the pain was sharper now. Blood dripped steadily from her brow, tickling the side of her face. She watched as Cooper circled around to the passenger side, where the door hung half open. He wedged his snout into the gap, pulling with determination. Every movement was deliberate, like a dog that remembered his training. But this wasn't just obedience. This was something more. The 2 younger dogs stayed back, ears perked, watching the road. Linda couldn't see their faces clearly, but she sensed their tension. Cooper finally got the door wide enough to slip inside. He nudged her hand with his nose, whining softly. The contact nearly broke her. For a brief moment, the fear gave way to something she hadn't felt in a long time, hope. She blinked hard, trying to stay conscious, trying to make her voice work. "Knife, side pocket," she whispered. Cooper stepped back, pawed at the seat, and nosed into her duty bag. She couldn't believe what she was watching. He found the folding knife clipped to the fabric and pulled it free with his teeth, dropping it near her bound hands. Linda fumbled, twisting her wrists against the zip ties, pain screaming through her joints. Her fingers finally reached the knife. With a trembling grip, she started sawing through the plastic. Time was slipping away. Down the road, headlights flickered. A dark SUV slowed near the bend, its shape familiar and chilling. Sheriff Don Wilcox. She recognized the vehicle from morning briefings. Linda's heart sank. He wasn't here to help. She remembered the warnings Hank Dobson had whispered weeks ago. "Don's not who you think he is." She hadn't wanted to believe it. Now she didn't have a choice. Finally, the zip tie snapped. Linda gasped in relief, grabbing the knife to cut her other hand free. Cooper backed out of the car, tail stiff, eyes trained on the oncoming vehicle. The younger dogs moved in closer, low to the ground. Trained or not, they sensed danger. Linda reached for the door, pulling herself out with a groan, her legs shaking beneath her. Her left ankle was likely sprained, but there was no time to think. The SUV's engine rumbled louder. Someone stepped out, tall, slow, confident. Sheriff Wilcox. His hand rested on his holster as he looked toward the wreck and saw her standing. Sheriff Wilcox didn't flinch when he saw her. His eyes locked on Linda's with a calm that chilled her to the bone. No surprise, no concern, just cold calculation. The same look she'd seen in too many crime scenes over her 30 years in law enforcement. Only this time, it was aimed at her. The dust from his SUV swirled around them as he stepped forward, boots crunching on gravel, hands still resting on his weapon. "I thought you were gone," he said, voice smooth, almost gentle. "Guess I underestimated you." Linda stood straight, despite the pain burning through her leg and the blood crusting on her cheek. "You did more than underestimate me," she said, her voice raw. "You left me to die out here, Dawn." Wilcox smiled faintly, the kind of smile that came from someone used to being in control. "You don't understand what's at play. If you did, maybe you wouldn't have poked your nose where it didn't belong." His eyes flicked to the dogs. "Funny thing, though, I thought that mutt was long gone." Cooper let out a low growl, stepping in front of Linda like a soldier taking position. The two younger dogs followed his lead. Linda reached for her utility belt, empty. Her gun was gone, her radio smashed. All she had was the folding knife, slick with blood, tucked into her palm. Not enough. Not against a man who once trained her, who now stood between her and the truth. "What are you covering up?" she asked, steadying her breath. "What happened to those reports I sent to internal? Why did Hank disappear after he started asking questions?" For a moment, Wilcox's expression faltered. Just a flicker, but enough. He took another step forward, then stopped. "Turn around, Linda," he said. "Walk away. Go home. I'll say it was an accident, that you panicked, ran off the road. No one will question it." Linda stared at him, her thoughts racing. She thought of Hank Dobson, her oldest friend in the department, gone without a trace. She thought of Rachel Myers, the quiet vet who'd told her Cooper had been acting strangely before he vanished. She thought of her son, Paul, and the night she lost him on this very road. The people she'd buried, the lies she'd accepted. She wasn't walking away this time. "I'm not going home," she said quietly. Wilcox's hand tightened on his holster. "Then I'm sorry, Linda. Truly." Behind him, the wind shifted. Gravel cracked. Someone else was coming. The crunch of gravel stopped Wilcox cold. His head turned slightly, not enough to take his eyes off Linda, but just enough to acknowledge the presence behind him. Linda's pulse quickened. Cooper stayed tense at her side, his ears trained forward. The other dogs shifted subtly, positioning themselves between her and the sheriff. The sun was now fully gone, and the desert had begun to breathe its cold breath across the dirt. From behind the sheriff's SUV, a figure stepped into view, tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a worn canvas jacket and jeans stained with dirt. His face was older now, more lined, but Linda recognized him instantly. Hank Dobson, alive, bruised, limping, but standing. He held no weapon, just his presence. And for Linda, in that moment, that was enough. Wilcox's expression changed the second he saw Hank. The confident smirk faded into something tighter, controlled, but anxious. "Well, damn," he muttered. "Thought we'd buried that problem." Hank kept walking slowly. "You tried," he said, voice hoarse. "Didn't stick." Linda blinked hard, trying to keep up with the surge of emotion. Relief, confusion, fury. She had assumed the worst when Hank vanished. He was one of the last honest men left in the department. His disappearance, just days after submitting evidence about misallocated K-9 funds and falsified training reports, had been too convenient. "What did you find, Hank?" she asked, stepping forward despite the pain in her leg. He didn't look at her. His eyes were on Wilcox. Everything. The missing money. The dogs that were listed as retired, but never showed up at their new homes. The ones that were shipped off for private contracts. He paused, swallowing hard. Cooper was supposed to be one of them. Wilcox laughed once, dry and bitter. So this is it? You're both gonna stand here and what? Take me in? With what? A knife and 3 dogs. Linda raised the blade still clenched in her hand. We don't need to take you in. We just need to make it out of here alive. There was a beat of silence. Wilcox looked between them. Then his hand moved. Cooper lunged. Cooper hit Wilcox with full force, slamming into his torso and knocking him backward into the gravel. The gun clattered from Wilcox's hand before he could even aim. Dust exploded into the air as the sheriff landed hard, trying to shield his face from the dog's snapping jaws. The younger dogs circled quickly, barking but holding position. They were trained not to attack unless commanded. Cooper, however, didn't wait for orders. He never had to. Linda stumbled forward, adrenaline pushing past the pain in her leg. She kicked the pistol further out of Wilcox's reach, sending it sliding under his vehicle. Her hands were still trembling from the knife, but she kept the blade tight in her grip. Cooper stood over the sheriff, growling low and steady, his eyes never blinking. One wrong move and he would strike again. Hank stepped in next to her, breathing hard, clearly struggling. We need to go, he said quietly. He's not alone. I saw a second vehicle coming in from the East Ridge. He glanced over his shoulder toward the dark hills behind them. They'll be here in minutes. Linda looked down at Wilcox. His lip was bleeding, and dirt clung to the sweat on his face. Still, his eyes held that same quiet arrogance. You're too late, he said. Whatever you think you found, it won't matter. Nobody's going to believe either of you. I've already buried bigger problems. Not this one, Linda muttered. They moved fast. Hank helped her into the front seat of the damaged patrol car while Cooper jumped in the back without hesitation. The other dogs followed. The engine groaned when she turned the key, but it started. Barely. As she shifted into drive, her hands were still shaking, but her mind was clear. They had one shot, one chance to get out, to get the truth into the right hands before Wilcox's men closed in. In the rearview mirror, she saw the sheriff slowly rising to his feet, brushing off his shirt, blood on his collar. He didn't run after them. He didn't need to. He knew the desert, and he knew that the real hunt was just beginning. As the patrol car bounced over the rocky path, Linda exhaled, her voice almost a whisper. He thought I was dead. He has no idea how alive I am now. The patrol car rattled over the uneven desert path, engine groaning with every bump. Linda gripped the wheel tighter, wincing each time her sprained ankle pressed the gas. The headlights barely cut through the thick night, and the road ahead was nothing more than sand and memory. Cooper sat in the back seat, ears perked, watching the darkness like a sentinel. The other 2 dogs huddled together, silent and alert. Hank stared out the window, sweat beading on his forehead despite the cool desert air. There's a pull-off up ahead near an old ranger station. We can stop there, get you patched up, he said. And I have the flash drive. He tapped his chest. Everything you need to bring this whole thing down. Linda's heart pounded. Evidence won't matter if we don't make it out of this alive. Her mind reeled. How many people in the department had known? How many had helped Wilcox move dogs like Cooper into black market hands? What else had they buried over the years? For a long time, she had suspected rot under the surface, but never like this. Not organized, not violent. They reached the station, abandoned, silent, covered in sand. The wooden sign was faded, the door creaking on rusted hinges. Inside, Linda collapsed into a chair, pain shooting through her leg. Hank found a first aid kit under the sink, and while he wrapped her ankle, Cooper lay beside her, his head resting gently on her boot. She looked down at him, and for the first time that night, her eyes filled with tears. He came back for me, she whispered. Hank nodded. They remember, more than people think. She wiped her face and looked at the flash drive he placed in her hand. What's on here? Names, transfers, off-the-books contracts, dogs trained at taxpayer expense, sold to private security overseas, all protected by officers Wilcox recruited over the years. And not just here, this goes through 3 counties. Linda felt the weight of it, not just in her hand, but in her chest. This could break everything. Yeah, Hank said, but it also makes you a target. A howl pierced the night outside. Not a coyote too deep. Linda stood quickly, wincing as she put weight on her ankle. Cooper was already at the door, growling low. Flashlights flickered in the distance, bouncing across the sand. They found us, Hank said. Linda looked at the drive again, then at Cooper. Then we move now. We take this to Rachel. She's the only one we can trust. And with that, they vanished into the dark. Truth in hand, danger at their heels. They moved through the night without headlights, guided only by instinct and memory. Linda knew the back roads of the desert better than most. 20 years of patrols had etched the paths into her bones. Every mile they put between them and the old ranger station felt like a small victory. But no one in that car thought they were safe. Not yet. Hank navigated from the passenger seat, reading road signs barely visible under moonlight. If we cut through the north edge of Red Mesa, we can reach Rachel's clinic by sunrise, he said. But we'll need to avoid the main roads. They'll have checkpoints. Linda nodded, but her thoughts were elsewhere. She glanced in the rearview mirror. Cooper's head rested on the back seat, his breathing calm now. The other dogs were curled up beside him, but alert. She couldn't shake the image of Cooper lunging at Wilcox, protecting her without hesitation. It wasn't just loyalty. It was something deeper, something earned over years of trust, grief, and silent understanding. Rachel Myers was the last person outside that world they could trust. She wasn't a cop. She wasn't political. She was the kind of person who remembered birthdays, who brought coffee to training days without being asked. And she'd been the only one who cried when Cooper was listed missing in the system. Rachel had always known something was wrong. She just didn't have proof. By the time the first glow of morning touched the horizon, the tires rolled onto gravel outside the clinic. A single light burned in the back room. Linda's chest tightened. She's up, she said. She always starts early on Thursdays. They approached on foot, quietly. Hank carried the flash drive, while Linda leaned on him for balance. Cooper walked ahead, tail low, ears twitching. As they stepped onto the porch, the clinic door opened slowly. Rachel stood in the doorway in sweatpants and an oversized flannel. Her eyes locked on Linda first, then drifted down to Cooper. Her hand flew to her mouth. "Oh my God," she whispered. "I thought he was dead." "He saved my life," Linda said simply. Rachel stepped aside without a word. She didn't ask questions. She just let them in, locking the door behind them and pulling the blinds shut. Outside, the desert looked calm, peaceful even, but Linda knew better. The real storm hadn't even started yet. Rachel moved quickly once they were inside. She guided Linda to a chair in the back room and brought out a cold pack for her swollen ankle. The dogs settled quietly around them, sensing the shift in energy. This was a safe place, for now. Hank pulled the flash drive from his pocket and placed it gently on the stainless steel exam table. "This has everything," he said quietly. "Names, transactions, field reports. It's all there." Rachel stared at the drive as if it were radioactive. "Where did you get this?" "I took it from a secure desk in Wilcox's storage facility outside Wickenburg," Hank said. He had backup copies on paper, probably didn't trust digital alone. He made a mistake leaving it behind. Linda sat forward, wincing. "We need to get it to someone who can actually use it. The state attorney's office, maybe the feds." She paused. "But we can't go through normal channels. Wilcox has people everywhere. Deputies, judges, maybe even someone in internal affairs." Rachel's face was pale. "If you're right, then you can't trust anyone except people outside the system. People with nothing to lose." Hank nodded. Exactly. I've got one contact in Phoenix. Retired FBI. His name's Carl McMillan. He's clean. Off-grid now. But if anyone can get this out safely, it's him. There was a sudden bark from outside, short, sharp. Alert. Cooper. Rachel ran to the side window, peeking through the slats. 2 vehicles just pulled up across the road, she whispered. Dark SUVs. Linda's body reacted before her mind did. She grabbed her belt, slid the knife from its sheath, and looked toward the back exit. We're not ready for a fight, she said. We move now. Rachel moved to the closet, pulling out a box and handing it to Hank. Supplies. Food, maps, burner phones, cash. I keep it for emergencies. The tension in the room thickened. Cooper stood by the door, tail straight, muscles tight. Linda locked eyes with him just for a second. No barking, no fear, just readiness. He would follow her through anything. She turned to Rachel. We'll come back when it's over. If we don't, you'll know what to do. Rachel nodded, tears welling in her eyes. Be careful. With flash drive in hand and headlights off, they disappeared once again into the early morning haze, carrying not just evidence, but the weight of everything they'd lost. The road to Phoenix was long and unforgiving, a 2-lane highway cutting through nothing but desert and memory. Linda drove with one hand steady on the wheel, the other gripping the burner phone Rachel had given her. No calls, no texts, just silence. In the back seat, Cooper kept his head up, eyes scanning every turn in the road. He hadn't relaxed since they left the clinic. Neither had she. Hank gave directions in short, clipped sentences. We'll meet McMillan just outside the city limits. Old truck stop off Route 17. He said 30 minutes. He glanced at his watch, then out the window. If we're lucky, we'll make it there before Wilcox does. Linda didn't answer. She could feel the pressure closing in. Not just from Wilcox's men, but from the weight of it all, the years she looked the other way, the loyalty she gave to a broken system, and the people it had cost her. Paul, Hank, even Cooper, they all carried scars because of what had been buried. As they neared the edge of Phoenix, traffic began to appear in the distance. The world felt louder, faster, harsher than the quiet isolation of the desert. Linda gripped the wheel tighter. You sure we can trust him? McMillan? Hank nodded. He's got nothing to gain and too much to regret. He walked away from the bureau because of cases like this. He'll get the files where they need to go. He's our best shot. They pulled off the highway into the dusty lot of the truck stop. It looked abandoned at first, but then an old green Chevy pickup eased out from behind the building. A man stepped out, grizzled, gray-bearded, with a cane and a limp. He nodded once as they approached. Linda Hayes? He asked. She nodded. You McMillan? Retired, but yes. He held out his hand, and Hank passed him the flash drive. McMillan turned it over in his fingers like it weighed 100 pounds. You realize once this goes out, your lives are going to change. Maybe not for the better. Linda exhaled slowly. Our lives changed the minute Wilcox tried to bury us. But before anyone could say another word, the sound of screeching tires cut through the air. 3 black SUVs came tearing into the lot, dust flying behind them. Doors opened fast. Armed men stepped out. No badges. No warnings. McMillan's voice was low. Get behind the truck. Now. Linda reached for her knife, and Cooper was already moving. The first gunshot cracked through the dry Arizona air like a thunderclap. Linda dove behind the rusted truck, dragging Hank down with her. Bullets pinged off the metal, echoing through the empty lot. Cooper darted through the chaos like a shadow. Fast, silent, focused. No barking, no hesitation. He had one target, the man giving the orders. Wilcox stood just beyond the SUVs, half hidden behind the open door of the lead vehicle, barking commands like a man who had nothing left to lose. His eyes swept the lot until they locked on Linda. For a moment, their stare met. No words were needed. He knew she had made it to the finish line, and he was there to end it. From the corner of her eye, Linda saw McMillan crouched behind a concrete pillar, already uploading the contents of the flash drive to a secure satellite feed. His fingers moved steadily across the keyboard. 2 minutes, he shouted. Hold them off for 2 more minutes. Linda grabbed a dropped handgun from the dirt beside her. Not her weapon, but good enough. She leaned out, fired twice. One of Wilcox's men dropped. Hank, still limping, found cover near the fuel pumps and returned fire. And then, through the haze of dust and adrenaline, she saw Cooper leap, straight at Wilcox. The two went down hard. Wilcox's pistol flew from his hand as Cooper pinned him to the ground, growling deep and low. But Wilcox fought back, landing a brutal elbow to Cooper's ribs. The dog staggered, just enough for Wilcox to roll away. Linda didn't think. She just ran. The last 10 feet felt like 10 miles. Pain shot through her leg, her ears rang from the firefight, and time slowed. She reached Cooper just as Wilcox pulled a knife from his boot. With every ounce of strength she had left, Linda slammed into him, knocking the blade away. They wrestled in the dirt, old friends, now enemies. Wilcox's face was twisted with rage and disbelief. "You were never supposed to survive," he hissed. "And you were never supposed to lead," she spat back. A shot rang out, sharp and final. Wilcox went still. Hank stood behind them, gun shaking in his hand. His face was pale but steady. Sirens echoed in the distance. Dozens of them. Lights flashed across the horizon. Backup, real this time. Linda looked down at Cooper, bleeding but breathing, and dropped to her knees beside him. "You saved me," she whispered, stroking his fur. Again. And for the first time in a long, long while, she let herself cry. Not from fear, but from relief. What had been buried had finally come to light.